I just wanted to feel alive because I just felt so empty and dead inside. And that's where it's like reverse for other people. They're like, oh, I'm doing this to escape, or, you know, and I'm like, I was the complete opposite. I just needed to feel alive because, like I said, I was just so dead for so many months. I was just like on autopilot, not even knowing what I'm doing half the time.
This is the Knockin Doorz Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knockin Doorz Down is all about. Welcoming to Knockin Doorz Down, author of This Is Me Trying, Navigating Through a Lifetime of Trauma, Wil Prescher. Thank you very much for joining me, good sir.
Thank you for having me.
Where are we at today?
Today I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay, so you grew up in the Texas area, so we've pretty much stayed there?
Yes, yeah. I have only been out of Texas living-wise once. That was up in Idaho. There's a portion of the book that explains the crazy fiasco that happened there. So,
well, now I'm curious why Idaho. I mean, you know,
I grew up in the foster system, and one of my adoptive caseworkers, she just put a lot of kids in Idaho to be adopted because it was easier to dump them off up there. And so she took me up there and left me and came back to Texas.
Oh, well, shit. How old were you then?
I was 12.
12, man.
Yeah.
And I know your book, you touch on, obviously within the title, a lifetime of trauma. So moving around in the foster care system, which thank you for coming on, being vulnerable about that, because a lot of people don't realize how traumatic that really can turn out for so many to be. And you're one of those situations. How old were you, though, when you first ended up adopted?
So legally, I just got adopted this year by my parents, my foster parents who I met. They were my last foster home I ever went to.
Okay.
I've been with them since I was 12 years old. And so there was never no need to legally be adopted by them, because after 6 months of being placed with them, they were mom and dad, like they were my family. I wasn't going anywhere.
Sure.
But this year, with my book coming out, me graduating college and everything, I wanted their last name with all my accolades versus my biological father's last name. So that's why we did the whole adoption, so I can change my name and everything like that. But when I first went into foster care, I was 7 years old, but I had been in CPS custody since I was 3. Oh. So at 2 to 3, we started bouncing around from family to family. And then 7 is when the state came over and took over. And I was in foster care from 7 up until 18.
Now, when you say we, are you talking siblings?
Oh, yeah. I had one other sibling with me. We were together in that first home for about 2 years. And then we got separated. And she eventually went back to our biological family. And I stayed in the system.
Oh, wow. Okay. What did she end up with? Like grandparents, aunts, uncles, something along those lines?
Yeah, something along those lines. She had a lot of our biological family take her in. I was more of a troublemaker in my younger days, so no one really wanted me. So I got the luck end of the draw and had to stay in the system. So,
well, you can't share that now. I got to know, what were you doing? Were you just one of those kids that was hard to keep your attention, just rebellious?
All of the above. There was so much going on with the abuse that was happening and the trauma. And at 7 years old, you don't know how to really process everything that's going on. So I was just acting out like it was bad. And I look on it now, I'm like, man, I didn't have to do all that. But
well, but that's kind of the good thing when I talk with people that maybe their kid is struggling with some substance abuse. There tends to be, usually for all of us, hey, hand up an underlying trauma. But it's kind of like, it's better that you screw up as a kid than when you become an adult. The consequences tend to be a little bit more extreme once we hit that 18 mark.
Oh, yeah. My dad has always reminded me that, because we used to have these conversations when I was younger. He's like, one of these days you're going to call me and be like, Dad, you were right. And I was like, nah, I will never do that. I had to do that the other day. I had to bite my tongue and be like, you know what, you were right. You're so right about that.
Well, that's fascinating to me that your family adopted you. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 29 now. So it was, I know, like when people say you got adopted at 29, I was like, you know what? We're just like, screw it, let's go do it. So
No, I love it. I'm the opposite. I think that's one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. That's that power of love, right?
Yeah, I've been for 17 years in September. So, like I say, we never needed anything concrete. But as my parents are starting to get older, so like if anyone ever tried to contest like a will or something like that, it would just make things flow easier if I was just legally their son. And so that's how kind of why we started going towards it.
Yeah.
So, but
let's jump back to you. You were born Temple, Texas. Am I remembering that? Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like definitely a fractured family that was there. So was it mom was gone, dad was gone, both? What?
Both of them. Apparently, my biological father, he left when I was about 3 months old. My biological mom, she was in and out of prison, always off on drugs. My oldest brother, he was 7 years older than me. He was taking care of us at the time. It was me, him, and two other siblings. And like I say, he 11 taking care of a 8, 7, and like a 4-year-old. So he pretty much raised us our first 3 to 4 years of life. Like he did everything. And so it was just tough.
I couldn't imagine. And that role of parenting should never be thrusted upon a child ever.
Oh yeah.
We finally end up in the foster care system. I'm going to assume, when I'm hearing it, mom in and out of prison, drugs, that there was just not really any stable parental figure whatsoever at any point.
Whatsoever. Not until I got into the foster system. So like I said, I was 7. It was about 4 or 6 days from my 8th birthday. So that's when we went into our first foster home. And then the second foster home was when my sister got in the same house together, the home together. That home, it was good. There was no physical abuse in this home. It was more emotional abuse and stuff of that nature, because like I say, in foster care, you have to take the good with the bad. So I wasn't getting physically abused, but I was getting more emotionally abused. And so, but I, just bit my lip and took it, because at the end of the day, I had 3 hot meals and clean clothes and a bed to sleep in. So it's just one of those things.
Was that the majority of where, if you pinpoint kind of looking back in your life, putting the book together, where you would say the trauma was? Because, and I've said this too, I didn't incur physical abuse with my parents, but unfortunately with a relationship later on when my addiction was going, and the mental emotional abuse to me was worse than anything physical.
And see, I argue that a lot too. And people, everyone has their own opinion, but I argue that, the emotional neglect and the emotional abuse and mental abuse is way worse than physical, because as a child, you want to connect with someone. Like, we earn the yearn to connect with someone. And so I never, ever received that until I was about 13 when I got with my family now, 12, 13 now. And so I think that definitely played a huge part in me growing up, especially with all the abuse, dealing with, I later found out last year I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Oh, wow.
And so a major thing of that, a component of that is abandonment issues. And so that was my main thing growing up in the system. I had all these people that just kept abandoning and leaving me. So I was never able to get that connection that I needed.
Sure. How now in adulthood, what kind of steps have you taken when unraveling your trauma and becoming more healthy?
The one thing I did the most while writing this book, because I didn't realize how traumatic my life was. Because, as you go through trauma, like your brain kind of tends to shield you from most of it. And so when I was writing this book, I had to dig deep and relive some of like the deepest, darkest trauma that I didn't even remember that I had. And so that was very hard. And so I just had to stop writing for maybe months at a time. And then I've been in therapy for the last year. So work with my therapist. That way I'm not re-triggered. That way I don't want to say relapse. Because I don't really say it was addiction that I had, but I was drinking heavily, trying to just feel something else other than the pain.
Yeah.
And so I just had to really, really work on my mental health. That was my first and foremost priority.
It's interesting you bring that up because I've told people this, when talking about, well, why were you drinking so much? What were you wanting to numb out? Is like, no, I'm sorry. I was fucking numb as is. I wanted to actually like be able to feel something and enjoy and engage. And I felt as though, and I struggle at times. I'm just a socially awkward dude. Well, it's just how it is. Sometimes I just am. But I wanted to actually feel something because I felt I had shut down to so many different aspects of my life just to keep an even keel that I didn't know what joy was. I didn't know, I just didn't know how to navigate it.
And see, I have a huge portion of my book that says that too. It's like, I just wanted to feel alive because I just felt so empty and dead inside. And that's where it's like reverse for other people. They're like, oh, I'm doing this to escape or, and I'm like, I was the complete opposite. I just needed to feel alive because like I said, I was just so dead for so many months. I was just like on autopilot, not even knowing what I'm doing half the time.
Did you find in going back through, because I've debated this too, at least, I don't know that I'll write a book, but just kind of retrace, understand myself a little bit. I had just huge gaps of time that I just don't remember a damn thing.
I didn't really have that. Unfortunately, I've been blessed with a good memory. And I say unfortunately, because it gets to where I just can't forget things no matter how hard I try. So the gaps I never really had, unless of course I was blacked out drunk. Right. But other than that, no, I remember pretty much everything as if it just happened 5 minutes ago.
Wow. You are blessed, but cursed at the same time.
Yeah. So cursed. So especially when it came to writing this, because I remember every little detail or what was unique. I had my CPS case file. So when you're in a CPS, the system, they document every little thing that you do. And so it came on this disc and there was about, I think, 2,700 pages of every little thing I've ever done in my whole entire life. And like any emails that my mom sent to the CPS caseworkers, it was on there. So that actually helped me write the book too, because I skimmed through all those pages and I was able to put everything in together chronological order. So some things I forgot that I did, like getting in fights and stuff like that. But no, it was in there. Damn.
So now when Mr. X reaches out and goes, hey, remember, I'm proud of you for writing the book, but remember when you beat me up, you're like, oh, page 42, I did. Damn, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did. And I said that to a few of my friends because I'm like, look, they have our whole fight in here. Like when we have like the ISS disciplinary slip and all that, like everything was in there. So that was pretty cool. So I got to like relive everything.
Oh, good old in-school suspension, right?
Yes. I was always in ISS every single day.
So you mentioned that you wouldn't necessarily classify yourself as an alcoholic, but you're definitely drinking to, as I can relate, are you completely abstinent of alcohol now? And has that been a part of your journey too?
No, I still drink. Like if I go out and celebrate, like on the weekends with friends, I'll drink. But now I'm not drinking excessively. I'm not drinking to just black out and just be absolutely just like done with life. Now I can drink and have fun and not be like the belligerent drunk crying in the corner somewhere. So for me, it was never an addiction. So I people always get onto me for that, but I've been studying substance abuse for like the last 4 years. And so I believe there is a difference between substance abuse and addiction. Addiction is when you cannot live without, when your body needs it. Abuse is more when you need it. And so I was needing it versus like me waking up and like getting tremors and having a drink. So I could go months without drinking, days on end without drinking. It was just when I would see something or hear something, I would get triggered and I'm like, oh, let me just drink to numb it out. Sure. And I'll be better.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I was curious. And for me, there's been many people, we've had people that I've talked with that maybe this substance, maybe it was heroin, but they can drink like a normal person. It's just such an interesting thing about not only our brains, but our genetic makeups of how we can work. And one substance this, one substance, not so much.
Oh yeah. I definitely agree with that because I have never done I've only smoked weed once my whole entire life. The only other substance I've ever done is alcohol. So like, I don't really have like any drug stories, so I can't really relate. only because I know I have addictive personality. So I'm all like, it's going to take one hit, and then I am like, my whole life is over, and I've done way too much to let it get to that.
Absolutely. Well, and clearly there was a family lineage of it, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Both my biological parents, substance abuse, and so I'm just like, man, I know it's already predisposition in my head. So I'm like, I'm not even going to give it any sort of fuel.
So speaking of, did you ever get an opportunity to have any reconciliation with your birth parents, or is that something that not of interest, or just wasn't ever presented to happen?
So my biological father, he stays with my sister. He just got out of prison. Him, I just don't really have any interest in meeting, just because, I mean, there's just nothing that he can do for me.
Sure.
He just hasn't been in my life, and I'm 29 now, and I have a dad. My biological mom, that is a very, very challenging, rocky situation. I will give you the gist of it. I tried to reconcile with her about 2 to 3 years ago. Flashback to my younger days, I was sexually abused by someone in her family circle. And she got the bright idea a couple of years ago to give him my phone number so he could call me. And that kind of ended our relationship right then and there. And that was kind of transpired into my downward spiral, because for some reason she thought it was cool to give him my phone number. He thought it was cool to call me. And so, yeah, so not anymore. Not after that. I tried. I did all I could do, but.
Well, I understand that. Well, shit, man. I mean,
I know when I tell people that, like, yeah, it's that they're like, how? Like, yeah, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's bad enough. You know, I went through molestation as a child myself, and I just couldn't imagine if my parents were like, "Oh, just go ahead and give him a call and yeah, go ahead and talk it out." Like it's not water under the bridge. It's like,
and that's how I felt about it. Like, there's nothing I can say. If you're looking for forgiveness, I don't think that's for me to give to you. I think you have to find that on your own. And so, yeah, when she did that, that was kind of the last straw at us ever reconciling on anything, because, you know, I was trying to overlook the drug abuse growing up. Because, like I said, she was 28. Yeah, she's 28 with 4 kids. One was like 15, you know, like she had her whole substance abuse problem. So, you know, she was going through it. And so I was trying to overlook that, you know, I was trying to reconcile, you know, and it was nice getting to know her, because, you know, I was learning more about me, like how she named me after her favorite basketball players, stuff which I never knew where my name came from. And I was just learning why I like to do so many things that she did. And then this happened, and it's just like one of those things. It was like a slap in the face, because it's like, not only did I lose you, so I have to deal with that trauma all over again, losing you. And then now I have to deal with the trauma of hearing his voice again and reliving all that trauma that I went through 20 something years ago. And so it was a lot. And it happened about 2 years ago. And I just let go, and then just whatever happened to me. So
I can't say I blame you. How did you, and I guess I'm selfishly asking this question, because I still kind of work through it as well. Being a man, being molested by a man. What kind of work did you do on that? I got to a good understanding maybe 5 years ago. Like, I was a child, I was a victim. It's okay to say as a victim, it wasn't my fault. But what kind of personal work have you done in that area?
And see, that was the earlier years in my life, maybe up until honestly, probably about 22, 23. I couldn't talk about it without crying or without breaking down, especially when I was a child. I remember my parents would ask me about it, or like my therapist, because I was in therapy from the time I was 3 until I was 17. That's another story that we're not going to, we can get into that one too.
Okay.
And so we had the family therapist, and so he helped me work through a lot of it, but I still wasn't able to talk about it, because I was just ashamed. I felt like it was my fault. And especially growing up in the Black community, I talk about this a lot. A lot of molestation happens. It's very, 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 like, it happens common. It happens all the time. And it's just taboo and swept under the rug. Because, you know, back in the old days, it's like you don't really talk about what goes on inside your house.
Yeah.
And so I was just always so ashamed. And when I finally spoke out about it, my whole biological family pretty much turned against me, and everyone kept telling me you should have kept your mouth shut. That's why I stayed in the system so long, and everyone else took my sister back because she never spoke up and never said anything. I don't think she only opened her mouth one time throughout the whole ordeal. And I was always very vocal about it because I just never, I understood, even from an early age, I knew that it was not right. Yeah. And so it took me years to finally get to the point where I had to tell myself, it is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. And so, like I say, I was about 20 to 22, about 23. I remember I was driving and I heard this song by Demi Lovato called Warrior. And it just struck with me. And I was like, okay, you know, it's not your fault. Like, you did nothing wrong. And so it took me some time. That's what I tell everyone. Like, everyone has their own time frame when it comes to trauma. There's no statute of limitation. It's just going to take time to try to keep working through it.
And a lot of the people more educated than me and even the digging in I've done have found that, you know, our brain comes to maturation around 26. And sometimes that's where some of this stuff can start to take a stronghold in our psyche and how we see ourselves in the world, process information, and relate to others, connect with others. And, you know, I'm just glad that you dealt with it because we can. And I applaud you for speaking up, because we don't, there's no comeback to these people if we just continue to sit silently.
And I like what you said, because that's one of the topics in my therapist talk about now. She's like, you know, sometimes things happen later on in life. That way we can process them because our brain is more mature. At 12 and 13, I couldn't process anything versus, I mean, I was going through puberty. I was going through the foster system. I had so many things going on. My brain could not isolate one problem and process it. And so now that I'm a little bit older, like I say, I have more knowledge of the world and everything. And so it was easy to process this time around versus the first time. And so that's why I only spiraled out for maybe, I say only a year, but in terms of trauma, it felt like it was 10 years. But so it wasn't that long, and I didn't completely ruin my life. Yeah. So that was the good thing. I still had jobs. I was still working. I was just a very functionally depressed, severely depressed person.
Well, I'm glad you're on the other side and sharing your story to help others. I have to ask, as a guy that was a big basketball player and fan, who then did your mom name you after?
So my full name is Wilsdarian Dominique Shaquille.
Oh,
so Shaquille O'Neal is one of them, and Dominique Wilkins is the other one.
Hey, you gotta like Dominique, man. That dude was ahead of his time.
Oh yeah. That was one of her favorite players, him and Shaq. So
right on.
So yeah, that was pretty cool.
I love it. It was your full first name, like a family name?
That I don't know. She says I was named after my biological father, which I don't want to give his name away on the air, but
no.
So his name and my name are nowhere near each other, so I have no idea. But I love it. Like at first, I used to hate it, but now I'm like, it's pretty cool, like because no one else has that name, so I dig it.
Yeah. Maybe she did a word scramble, just put the letters out there and formed it together and went Wilsdarian. Perfect.
I think so. Maybe. Hopefully. I don't know. I guess I can never ask anymore, but maybe one day.
I think it's a powerful name, though. I dig it.
Thank you.
So we're bouncing through foster care system. How many different households do you recollect going through?
About 5 in the about 6. About 5 to 6 in the 4-year span.
Okay.
So I was at my first one, and I was at the second one for about 4 years, and then that's when I started bouncing through different homes and through the adoption system and everything.
Now, when you ended up with your folks now, and did I piece it together correctly? This is when you went from Texas to Idaho?
Yeah, I went from Texas to Idaho, and then they came and got me because they're like, okay, so I was just going to go see the placement and see if I liked the family, whatnot, because I did not want to be adopted. I did not want to leave Texas. So I went up there. I was like, yeah, I like it. And they're like, okay, sign this paper, send it. You like it here? I was like, okay. I signed it. And they're like, okay, well, you're adopted. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And like, you just signed to be adopted. So she was like, all right, well, have fun. I'm going back to Texas. And she just left me there for 2 weeks, and nobody knew where I was at. Not a single. She was the only person. And my foster parents at the time, she blocked all their numbers. And so, yeah. So literally for 2 weeks, I was stuck in Idaho, and no one knew where I was at. it wasn't until my therapist that I've been seeing since I was 3 years old. He got back from vacation. He called me and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm adopted." And he's like, "No, that's not going to work." So they got on the phone. They got with my judge, the attorney that I had. They're like, "You go up there the next day." Like, actually, they're like, "That day, get on the airplane to Idaho. If not, we're going to hold you in contempt or kidnapping or something like that." And so she came and got me. And then I am with my parents now.
Wow, that lady was just like, I'm out. Huh?
Yeah, she really was. And like to this day, like I've only seen her one other time. And I'm like, if I'm older and I see you, I don't think it's going to go the way you want it to go. But yeah, no, she just literally just dumped me up there. And like I say, for 2 weeks, no one knew where I was at.
Wow. Unreal.
So that's another thing about the foster system. Like, it's so easy to lose children, especially like that.
But hopefully people are, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, so to speak.
Hopefully now.
Yeah. Well, we might have to get your story out there a little more so maybe people will pay some more attention, right?
Yeah.
Damn. So tell me about your family now. I mean, what was your take when they came into your life? Was it a good fit right away or did it take a little bit while? Because this is the story that my head has built up is you come into this family and it's like, they're going to do it a little different. They're going to show love, but discipline as well and structure. And it's like, this is unfamiliar. I don't know what this is.
That's exactly how it happened. The first day they came and picked me up, I still remember what my mom was wearing and everything. And I just sat in the back of the car like, all right, here we are again. It's a new foster home. I know the rules. Y'all are going to put on like, oh, this is the perfect happy home the first 2 days. And then, then go into being like the shittiest place I've ever been in. But it was the complete opposite. I always tell this story because it's funny. It was the first time in my life I had my own room. I had a TV in my room and I had cable in my room for the very first time in my life. And I tell people that because I only had that cable in my room for about 2 weeks before my parents took it up because I just watched TV all night long and they would come wake me up and I would be so tired because I stayed up watching TV. But their approach was to let me be a kid and just treat me like I was a normal kid. And I think that kind of helped me bond with them so well because they never treated me like a foster kid. They had 2 other biological children, my brother and my sister. And they treated me like I was part of the family from day one. And so I think the nurture I got from them is kind of what helped mold into the relationship that we have now. Your
brother and sister now, they were pretty excited to have you on there. They were on board. There was never those moments of, well, he's not really our brother or any of that.
No, I don't think they've ever even said that. If they thought it, they never told me, but I don't even think they ever thought it. Like I say, within 6 months, it was pretty clear that's my brother and my sister. Like if you would hear us talk without seeing us, because my family is white. And so if you would hear us talk without seeing our faces, seeing our color, you would be like, okay, yeah, y'all have been siblings your whole entire life. We just bonded so well. And that was another major issue for me too, because they were white and I've been with white families before, but I preferred Black families. It's just because growing up the way I did, my biological parents and my biological family wasn't really fond of white people. We grew up in a community where it was majority Black. And so it was culture shocks going into the foster system, especially being raised by white families. And even with my mom now, like she just didn't know how to take care of a Black foster kid. And so it was a learning curve for both of us.
It's interesting you bring that up, that your biological family, because I don't know if you have hard facts or we can make an assumption. They probably had traumas there that carried back too. And generational trauma is so interesting. And I hope more people have started to catch on to that, especially after the occurrences that have happened in our country over the last 2.5, 3 years, especially because it gives so much relevance to the history that people like to ignore.
And so that's one of the last few chapters that I touch on in my book is generational trauma, because like I said, I will never forgive my biological mom and her family member for what they did to me. But I'm not bitter. I've moved on because, like I said, I just don't know their situation. That same thing, they might have been molested as a child, and that generational trauma might have keep on going because, they might have still talked to their abusers. And because people do it all the time. And because I think it's normal. I remember I had this friend, he posted on the social media, he's all like, I was abused as a child and my abuser still goes to the family function. I still talk to him all the time. And I'm just like, but a lot of people do that because I think it's normal. And I'm like, that is not normal. But then you go, it's the generational trauma because you tell your parents, especially in the Black community, like, oh, brush off, like, oh, that happened to me as a child. And so, you know, like, especially in Black community, they don't believe in getting self-help. They don't believe in therapy. Most communities don't, honestly. Because I grew up Black, I grew up with a Latino family, I grew up with a white family, and I can tell you out of all three of those families, the only family that do anything about therapy and mental health is white people. And so I know that's another huge portion of generational trauma, especially in the African-American or Black American community. And so I really, really wanted to touch on that as to why I'm not bitter, I'm not mad at them anymore, because I get it. Like I put in there, monsters aren't born, they're created. And someone created him into the monster, into my story. So I can be mad at him, but I can't be completely mad at him because I know it's something that it was a learned behavior from him. It's not something he just thought about overnight.
Yeah.
And so, everyone, I know that was a very hard pill for me to swallow. That took a lot of therapy, a lot of working through to come to that conclusion, to write that chapter, because I was so angry. But then I was all like, you can't be angry at something that someone else did to someone.
Yeah.
I can be angry at his actions, but like I said, I can't be completely angry at him because, like I say, he was young too. He didn't know better. So,
yeah.
And who knows, he could have had it tenfold worse than me. And so that was another thing I had to think about. That's
a huge challenge about compassion, don't you think? Because vengeance isn't a part of compassion. And I know, and I'm you as well, and everyone, we would much more prefer to be treated with compassion than we would with vengeance. But it's hard to let go when someone's inflicting pain.
Like I say, that was one of the hardest things I think I might have done my whole entire life, is letting go of that pain that I held on for so long, because I said I was over it. But then it wasn't until I was writing this book that I actually had to deal with that pain and relive it and go through it and come out on the other end and be like, okay, yes, I'm mad, I'm hurt that it happened. But at the end of the day, I don't know his reasoning behind it. It's not everything is so black and white as people like to think. Like the gray area is like, it's there. And sometimes we don't want to look at it, but sometimes we have to go through it. Yeah. And so that really helped me understand everything. So like I say, I will never say I forgive you, because I don't think forgiveness is for me, but I'm not bitter. I don't hold no resentment. I'm just moving on with my life. And that was the end of that.
Yeah. I think you nail it, is that forgiveness is to the self. That, I know for me, I was a child, I wasn't protected. This person was viewed as someone that was safe. I don't hold any anger or whatever. And the forgiveness is for me. I'm not going to sit and go like, oh, I deserve this or whatever. It's like, no, but it happened, and I don't have to let it define me to continue to be a hurt person that potentially hurts other people.
And see, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck in. They get stuck and being a victim for so long. And that's another thing I touched on, because, for so long we're victims to our trauma. And it's like, if we let it control us, then we're never going to learn. We're never going to grow from it. Until you say, okay, yes, this happened to me, but now look at me. I'm thriving. I'm surviving. You just never get out of that mindset. Oh, I can't forgive them what they did to me. Oh, what they did to me was wrong. And it's like, when I tell people all the time, it's like, we're not saying that what they did to you wasn't wrong. We're just saying there's nothing you can do about the situation. The only thing that you can do is your reaction to the situation. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I tell when I have because I work at juvenile detention centers and stuff like that. And I deal with a lot of, troubled youth. And that's always their go-to, is that what I just said. And I'm like, okay, you can't control everything in the world. The only thing that we have absolute control of every single time is our reaction to those events. And so that's what I wanted to make sure, that my reaction to that event wasn't negative like it had been before.
Do you do counseling directly with juveniles in detention, or what is it that you do now for work?
So that's what I'm trying to get back into. So I worked at a juvenile detention center for about a year. I was like a coach counselor, like a JSO, like a correctional officer. We had group therapy sessions or counseling sessions daily and stuff like that. I worked in various residential treatment centers for troubled foster kids and stuff like that who with behavioral problems. I myself almost had to go to one. So, I understand like some of these kids' behavioral problems just aren't that they're bad. It's just that they just don't have anyone to listen to them.
Right.
And sometimes that's what I needed. And I think that's what helped my parents now is they sat down and they listened to me. They listened to the text in between the lines when I said something. They're like, okay, my mom, oh, bless her heart. She's such a sweet lady. And I put her through hell growing up. Oh, I put this woman through hell growing up. But she knew at the end of the day, I wasn't mad at her. No matter how many ways I cussed her up and down, like I was the worst person to her. But, we came out on the other end and she tells me now, she's like, I know you were not mad at me. You were just mad at the world and you were just taking it out on me because I cared the most about you. Yeah. And so that's what I try to tell these people and the kids. It's like, okay, yeah, you're mad, but you have to figure out who you're really mad at.
What point did you decide I want to write a book? And what was the reasoning behind it?
I got COVID, so I was stuck at home for 2 weeks. And I was talking to my therapist, like, what am I going to do for 2 weeks? She's like, write a book. So I was like, okay, all right. I've always wanted to be a writer. Like ever since I was in the 3rd grade, I want to be a writer. When a teacher asked us what we want to be when we get older, I said an author. Every other kid was like, oh, I'm going to be a secret agent, policeman, Superman. I'm like, I want to be an author. And so it's always been something that I enjoyed. Like I say, I had to teach myself pretty much how to read and write because when I went into the foster system, I was grades behind all the other kids just because I didn't go to school. I was always suspended. And so I spent a lot of my time alone, like a loner, but hey, reading my books, writing. I used to write poems a lot. And so I just sat down to write. I wrote the very first section in a week and it was about 60 pages. And then after that, everything just flowed. It took me about 5.5 months to actually write the book. And then it took another 3 to edit and then get the illustrations and all that stuff done. So within about 9 months, it was completely finished and published. But yeah, it was just, once I started writing, it just flowed out like a waterfall. Like it was cool and it was really, really, really therapeutic.
That's pretty cool to think about that. If you ever have a conversation with the younger you at that age, you go, see, we're a writer.
Right. Yeah. So look, we made it. And that's what I like to, when I read the book, it's hard because I go back to when I was 4 or 5, reliving that trauma. And it's like, I just want to go and hug my younger self. I'm like, hey, look, we're going to be okay. Like, look, 20 some years from now, we're going to be a published author. Life's going to be great. We're going to be giving back to other foster children like you to kind of help them see their light and the end of the tunnel. And it's been a very fun and surreal experience.
I love it. Well, we'll tell people how they can find you on social media and get the book.
So all of my social medias, everything is my first name, Wil Prescher. Facebook, it's Wil Prescher. I'm pretty sure Instagram and Twitter are both Wil Prescher, just my first name. The book is on Amazon. There should be a link on all my pages and all my accounts to find it. I'm working on getting the ebook version out in the end of this week. And I'm also working on the audiobook as well.
Right on. Who's going to read the audiobook? Are you going to do it?
I've been thinking about doing it myself. I'm not too sure yet, but I think I might do it myself.
I think you should. I personally love autobiographies where people, share what they've been through. And I think it's great when the author's on there.
Okay, then yeah, I just have to get all the equipment and everything together. But yeah, I think within probably maybe start in the fall, because right now I'm trying to finish up and graduate in August and then get into my master's program. So right now my time's a little tight, but hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have it done and ready to be published.
What are we going for the master's degree?
Master's in social work.
All right. Well, this is the time of the podcast where we jump into some fun random questions. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right.
Ready.
You're stranded on a deserted island. You have one movie and one music album with you. What are they?
Oh, the movie is Norbit. The movie is definitely Norbit. And the album,
you doing?
Yes, definitely Norbit all the way. Or Scary Movie 2, one of those two. It's hard to pick. And the album would definitely be Pink's Misunderstood, her 2000, I think 1 or 2 album.
That was an awesome tour. I saw her by herself on that tour, and I saw her with Lenny Kravitz. Talk about a concert, man. That was a show.
I'm jealous. That is my go-to album. Anytime anything goes wrong in my life, I put that album on and play it from start to finish. That is my absolute favorite artist, my absolute favorite album. So yeah, I take that album with me everywhere. Even at school, I had it in my backpack. Like I just always had it with me. So I would definitely have to take that with me. Right
on. I dig it. Do you have any pet peeves? Stuff that just is annoying as hell?
There's a list, depending on who you ask. No. My biggest pet peeve would be people walking slow. I don't know why, but that just irks me. Like that's like I got long legs, so I'm 6'2", so I think that might be it.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm about 6'2". I don't know. It depends on what convenience store I'm walking out of. But
right, yeah.
I was walking with my kids and my daughter. She would just kind of not only walk slow, but she would do the thing that I guess I probably did as a kid too, where they just drift into you.
Yes, that's one of mine. Yeah, so if you cannot walk in a straight line and you walk slow, yeah. I lose it. I have a friend who's like equilibrium's off, so he cannot just walk in a straight line. Like he just gradually. I'm just like, oh, just walk behind me.
Walk behind. Follow the leader on this one.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any one person, living or not, who would that be?
Pink.
Yeah. I kind of threw a softball for you there, right?
Yeah, no, definitely Pink.
People that I know that have met her have said she's just an awesome person.
Oh yeah, like I can only imagine. Like, man, she has been the most unapologetic person I've known in the business, and just has been the same.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she's definitely. If I ever met her, that would be like one of the highlights of my life.
If they were to make a movie about your book, who would you want to play you?
Denzel Washington. No.
Hey, why not? I mean,
right? No.
Denzel could play me. Denzel could pull it off. He could play
Denzel
anything.
Can pull anybody. I haven't thought about that, but I've been thinking about that. You know, like if it does go, because there's a good love story in there that I could see being some potentially like a play or something, movie or something. So with that, I just don't know.
Well, you mentioned a good love story in there. So has it been working through the trauma? I know for me, I became a little bit not socially anorexic. I kind of struggle with that still at times, but accepting of love was hard for me. And now finally in a good place and a good solid relationship. Was that a challenge for you to the dating?
Definitely. Yeah. Even now, even the current situation I'm in now, I struggle with my BPD, my borderline personality disorder, because it's the first thing is abandonment issues. And so my tendency is I want to push you away. I'm going to cut everything off before you can leave me and hurt me. And that has been the foremost thinking in my whole entire life, even with my family now. That's why I didn't get along with my mom so well, because I was like, okay, every other woman in my life has told me that they love me, they're never going to leave me. And then they did. And so that's always been my biggest issue in relationships, is that thinking, the abandonment issues. So I'm working on it.
Yeah. You'll get there. Lifetime
it's
of
tough.
It is. It is. What would you say that you would want people who don't know anything about borderline to understand, maybe some misconceptions?
Don't watch the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trials. We're not all the same. We're not all the same. But what the sad thing is, like, I was sitting there watching that trial because they say that she has it too. And I was just sitting there thinking, I was like, she does not sound that crazy to me, except for shitting in the bed. That's something I won't do. But everything else she did, I was like, I probably would have done the same thing. But helping people live with it, just validate their feelings. That's all it is. It's just validation. We just need our feelings validated, make sure that we're not crazy. We're already emotionally unstable, and you're just adding fuel to the fire if you don't validate the feeling.
Right. So recognizing and acknowledging you're seen, you're heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Last one here. If you had any superpower, what would it be?
To read people's minds.
Really?
Yeah.
Wil, that scares the shit out of me. Why that?
Because I just want to know what people are thinking all day long. Just because I love psychology and I just love being inside people's head and mind and see how they think and stuff like that. So if I could read your mind, I could do that all day long. That'd be like pure entertainment. See why people think the way they think or what they're thinking about. Because I don't know, I like people watching. I'm just sitting there like, bro, what are you thinking about? Like, what bizarre thing are you thinking about while you're out walking in public that no one is even thinking about? You know, like everyone's like, oh, he's probably thinking about what he has to cook at home. But no, you could be thinking about the most bizarre situation just walking down the street and no one will ever think twice about it. I'm like, man, yeah, I wish I could read people's minds.
Yeah, I always found anthropology really interesting. Just people's patterns and behaviors and everything else. All right, well, the floor is yours. If there's any words of encouragement that from your life experience that you would like to lend to the listener.
Words of encouragement: go to therapy, seek help, go to therapy. Like it's. Especially now after COVID, it's more rampant and people are starting to go to therapy more because, like I say, they had all these new wave of depression people. Like, nice, welcome to the community, welcome to the family. Some of us are seeing threatens. I've had it for 20 something years, but I'm glad that you're here. If you need any help, just go to therapy and seek help. Like if you are struggling with anything, you can't do it on your own. And that's something that I've realized, especially with these last 2 years. We can't do anything in this world on our own. So don't try. Don't even set yourself up for failure. Just go get help.
Wil's book is This Is Me Trying, Navigating Through a Lifetime of Trauma. Wil Prescher, man, this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of the Knockin Doorz Down hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page. This podcast is owned by KDD Media Company.